Well, good morning, everyone in Colorado. This is Joseph from Heart Sound Recorder. I'd like to welcome you today to the Adjuvant Protocols for Healing. This is a weekly review of one protocol in my new book. So if you don't have my new book, you should get it because there is sections for notes that you should be writing notes in. Now, I'm giving you notes, all of these PowerPoint notes that you can see here will be made available to you as well as the recording. Monica, I am recording, right? And we are going, okay, great.
Yes, sorry, took me a moment.
That's okay. We are going to set up a library of these recordings so you can review them at another time. So as you know, Adjuvant Protocols for Healing just came out at the beginning of August, and practitioners around the country have the book. They're enjoying the book, which I'm very grateful that they are. And the purpose of this book was to go deeper, not only into my life's work and my experience, but Dr. Lee's. I base everything that I teach, and I always have, based on Dr. Lee's work. I feel that that is the most valid teaching that is and that has ever been. And the protocols, which I'll show you, are all based on his work. There has been some expansion because, you know, my life experience and clinical experience has added some things in, but not too many things. Excuse me. So one of the biggest questions that I get as a teacher and a practitioner is, Joe, what do you do for high blood pressure? What do you do for hypertension? And this is a very challenging condition, as we all know. And you may not know that 108 million people in the United States suffer from this condition. It's actually 1/2 of the adult population. You could say it's 1/3 of the total population, but it's 1/2 of the adult population. 1 out of every 2 people in this country have either hypertension, i.e. high blood pressure, or are close to it. So we're going to look at these reasons why. We're going to look at why Dr. Lee, in particular, had some specific thoughts on this, which I parallel. But there are 2 key words, and the reason I put this particular PowerPoint up is I want you to look at 2 parts of these 2 expressions, these 2 condition definitions. Do you see the word tension? That's a key. That's very key to what I teach and what Dr. Lee teach and the findings that we've had. And if you're looking at this part of it, high pressure, high pressure. So we're going to look at this. We're going to break it down. This is the protocol out of my new book, Adjuvant Protocols for Healing. This is adjunctive care. This is supportive care to what you already do. Chiropractic is excellent for high blood pressure. Acupuncture is excellent. Massage. Most of the modalities, the natural modalities, and using diet, which we'll touch upon today as well. So this is to be added to your primary care that you offer. So when we look at any protocol, there's two different ways that Dr. Lee approached it and I approached it. One is to address the three different parts of the tissue that we're looking at. And obviously, when we look at this, we're looking at the heart and the vascular system. And so we want to apply the accurate vitamin, mineral, and protein, like protein, for that tissue. And so basically, within the first part of each of my protocols, you'll see that that is addressed. Vitamin G, now called Cataplex G, discovered by Dr. Goldberg back at the beginning of the 20th century, is the key vitamin supplement. Now, I always give an alternative related primarily to, in this instance, this vitamin, because sometimes clients will say, I only want to take one product. I'm not taking three things. I'm not taking five things. You've already got me on two things, you can't add. So over the years, I have, for hypertension, I have used Cardio Plus very well. In most cases, it's not enough of the G, but at least it's something. And it has other benefits where I'm not going to go into Cardio Plus today. I'm going to focus on the vitamin. The mineral for hypertension, and you could say, well, Joe, there's several. You're right. You would be right. You could say magnesium. You say potassium. You're right. And actually, those two minerals and calcium, all the minerals that relax and calm, are in this product, Minchex. But I still don't use this as a primary for hypertension. But it is in there. You can have your choice. You can use range of motion, leg length checking, muscle testing, though I don't particularly advise muscle testing for products or dosages, but you could still use the leg length checking and the range of motion. And those you can learn through Dr. Keppel's work if you go on to Saline River Press and go and find Dr. Keppel's various teachings. You can learn how to apply those into finding what the right product is. But the main mineral is phosphorus, and I will show you why as we look at the triad of what you have to consider, what you have to address related to hypertension. And then the like protein for hypertension, you could say, well, is Drenamin, and you can see it here as the adrenals. So those are the three areas. Now, the three products that I focus in on when I have a client with hypertension or I'm advising practitioners on my HSR phone calls are Cataplex G and usually either phosphate or soybean lecithin. Remember, there's phosphorus in soybean lecithin, and I'll explain that as we get deeper into our conversation, and Orchex. So you have these alternatives. So the other product that I often use is G, Orchex, and Antrinex as well. So even though I said it's a triad of 3, there is this other that should be added. And that's why we have this in the also consider part. Now I have some other products here that I've added in that sometimes work better for clients. But the principle of the G, of the Orchex, and the Antrinex or the phosphate are the ones that we need to focus on. And that will be our focus today. So let's look at, what did Dr. Lee look at? He looked at, this is out of his book that you can get through Saline River Press, called the Therapeutic Food Manual. He focused in again about, here it is, phosphate liquid, Orchex, and then he doesn't say the Antrinex, but he also related Cyruta, which we'll get into. So Cyruta and phosphate really go together. And he also used Rhinotrophin, which I'm going to show you some of his writings on this that I think you'll be very interested in. And when we think of the 3 areas that cause high blood pressure, which is going to be the stress on the adrenals and blood viscosity, high blood, thick blood, or high blood viscosity, you can see that Lee considered, and this is why I gave you these writings, and you should get these books, because Dr. Lee says a lot in a few words. And there are little clinical pearls as you read through this. I'm not going to read through it all. This is your homework. But you will see that Lee has these little clinical pearls throughout. Look at this. The Rhinotrophin relates to this promotion of kidney function as he says it. But here's the pearl. The most common organ of stress. Now, you and I have grown up in the languaging of nutritional care as the adrenals being the primary organ of stress that deals with stress. But if you look deep into Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, it's not, it's the kidneys. And here, Dr. Lee knew this way before, any of us even realized it. So this is very interesting to look at. So here's the other things that he said. Again, I'm not going to go into all of this right now because I want to get deep into the products as much as I can in the time that I have. He talked about the accumulation of causing hypertension of the quality of the vasculature throughout the body, and the impact that thickness of blood has on that, plus the actual quality of that lumen of the vasculature. And this is really the key to hypertension, one of the big keys. And see, he has it here. Cholesterol accumulation, the improper fat metabolism. And remember that it is fat that is one of the big factors, not only in accumulating on the walls of the vasculature, narrowing it, increasing pressure, but it also has to do with the viscosity of the blood. There's only three things that increase the viscosity of the blood. And that's too much calcium in the blood. Oh, look what he says here. He addresses it right after. Oop, where's my arrow? Here it is. Calcium deposits in the semi-permeable membranes, reducing permeability. In other words, thickening, not only thickening the blood, but again, creating a vasculature that is not only narrowing, but is stiffening up. And he says it here. Calcium deposits follow cholesterol assertions and build up the characteristic pipe stem arteries of the advanced case. And you will love reading through this, which I'm not going to do, but I wanted to just give you a feel for how he was thinking and then how he addressed it, as I say, and then how I addressed it. I am addressing it with you. The other is this key enzyme called hydronidase. If you don't have enough in your system of this, the body can never relax. And what is the key factor in hypertension is the inability of the vasculature and the muscles, everything related to that system to relax. And we'll get really deep into this. Reduced hyaluronidase activity will with attendant reduced permeability. So just wanted to give you a feel for what Dr. Lee was saying. One of the other big factors here that we go over every Tuesday on my other webinar, the heart sound, when we're reading the heart sound recording graphs, is overall support of the heart. And that's why I put Cardio Plus as an option in my protocol, because that has Cardiotrophin, it has Cataplex G, it has Cataplex E2, and it has Cataplex C. And Cataplex C, of course, primarily addresses stressed adrenals. Cataplex E2 is a source of this hyaluronidase. Cataplex G, it has a vasodilating effect, and cardiotrophin, of course, distracts the immune system from attacking the heart itself. So I read this last week because I just love this particular paragraph here. But what I wanted to emphasize today is when we support the heart overall, where we are completely not only strengthening the whole body system, but we are helping the body systems to literally relax and function better. So they recently found this hormone in the heart. When you support the heart overall, you are allowing the heart to release these hormones that they didn't know even existed before 1983. Most recently, it was discovered that the heart also secretes oxytocin. Now, we know a little bit about this. Commonly referred to as the love or bonding hormone. In addition to its functions in childbirth and lactation, recent evidence indicates that this hormone is also involved in cognition, tolerance, adaptation. Just think of the intelligence of the heart and its relationship to the 100,000 miles of vasculature. Cognition, tolerance, adaptation, complex sexual and maternal behaviors, learning, social cues and the establishment of enduring pair bonds. Concentrations of oxytocin in the heart were found to be as high as those found in the brain. Now that is a real pearl. And how does that relate to hypertension? Because if the heart, one of the big things about hypertension is that the heart, in fact, has to be able to function. You could use the word perfectly, but certainly efficiently, in order for the various pressures on throughout the arterial system to be normal, to be balanced, to keep the body in that flow, literal flow of blood that is not pressing up against the arteries and overtaxing them. So now I'm not going to read this through, all this through, and go into it too deeply, because you have this in the appendix of my book. If you're going to take blood pressure, it has to be taken properly. Now, this that I wrote up for the book is basically current medical guidelines. So if you go into your medical doctor, your cardiologist, and you walk in, they take your temperature, they take your weight, and the minute you sit down and they take your blood pressure, it's not right. A person, they say, to get accurate blood pressure, because you have this white coat syndrome, not only the pressure of going into an office, but just being in an office, of just getting there and arriving on time and filling out all the paperwork, but just being in a healthcare, a medical doctor or cardiologist office, just the worry itself is challenging enough. And they recommend that this patient, the client, sit there 15 minutes prior to. I like to either have people take blood pressure the first thing when they get up in the morning, before they have coffee. Don't have them have coffee and tea and then have them send you their blood pressure. It's going to be higher, which I will address today as well. Or in the later afternoon, usually just before dinner, the day is done, people can sit down and relax before a glass of wine or anything else either. Certainly they could drink a warm beverage without caffeine, some nice decaffeinated or no caffeine tea, and then take the blood pressure. But they should always have a glass of water before you take blood pressure. So those are the two times, and you can read this through as well. So let's look at, and I know this isn't a great scan. I did the best I could with these scans. This is from the book that is the book that I teach out of. I live out of this book, and it's called The Product Bulletins. You can get it through Saline River Press again. I think it's only $35. But the first area we want to look at is vasodilation. And the primary product for that is going to be Cataplex G. Now, we have all used this now, many of us. You can bring down somebody's blood pressure within a few minutes just by having them chew up 4 to even 6 G. They don't need to take all of that every time they take the G, but certainly 3 G twice a day. As I put in the book, what did I put in my book? Yeah, I say 3 G 3 times a day, at least for a couple weeks, right? So, but what did Dr. Lee said about Cataplex G? And let me just mute everybody out here. Mute all. he mainly focused G with related to vasodilation and nerve relaxation. So the hypertensive person is the person that is usually, at least internally, if not externally, a type A personality, a go-getter, or someone that just does not have that ability to relax. They are more sympathetic dominant, we could say. And this is what G focuses on. Is anybody, and some of the indications, you can read this through yourself. And when you get the book, you'll be able to see it better. So he talks about anything where vascular dilation or circulation is impaired, and in balancing the autonomic nervous system. Everybody, please do not unmute, because I'm recording this. So thank you. I'll do questions after. So this is the key, one of the key vitamins in balancing that sympathetic dominant person, that person that has that type A personality where they cannot relax, and specifically focuses on the blood pressure itself. And I wanted to read one part of this right here. I can't expand this because it's in PowerPoint. When the synapse at the myoneural junction, so the nerve and the muscle, is affected by either a deficiency of enzymes, mediator substances, or a deficiency of potassium, it is apt to be delayed or not occur at all. Result may be paralysis, dystrophy, or ptosis. So here he was thinking that about that factor of vascular dilation. And if we get into the other uses of the cataplex G, and here he talks about it again, increases the synapse at the myoneural junction, where the neurological impulse is delayed or absent, especially in cases of paralysis, dystrophy, or ptosis. Potassium is essential. Here it is again. This is the person that conditions like angina, coronary insufficiency, and we've seen this with the heart sound recorder, where the 2-to-1 ratio is not there. It is the tic-tac rhythm, which can cause chest pain. So here is a key places where you would use the cataplex G, always with hypertension. And I'll let you read through this. This is out of a newsletter that I wrote. And also it goes into that G side of the B complex, and works with educating you on the various parts of the cataplex B complex. So this is Wally Schmidt, who gave me permission to put this in the newsletter and use his work. You can get his book. I believe Saline River Press carries this. You could check with them, or you can call this number to get this book as well. And you can see nerve relaxing, vasodilating, hypertensiveness, tachycardia, pre-angina, any type of the person that is, again, this type A or excessive worrier, person with apprehension, depression. This is where G really shines. And even And Dr. Lee and Dr. Schmidt have taught this over the years. Even the digestive issues with G aids in stomach hydrochloric acid production, helps overly alkaline patient, has for a spastic gallbladder. So there's a lot of real great pearls in here. And because it is such a huge factor with vasodilation and circulation, Cataplex G is always the main product to use in any eye condition. So we're not going to discuss that today. But so you can see that G is especially used in that high blood pressure type person. Now, some of you are saying, well, what about the Cataplex B core now? And this is a great conversation to have, because we have been finding with this new Cataplex B core, there's such a broad range now of both B and G, even though I don't have it in my book related to hypertension, Cataplex B core, because G is the primary side of that part of the B complex. We have had some feedback that Cataplex B core does help balance. It certainly doesn't raise blood pressure, it balances it. So B core can be used for blood pressures that are too low to bring those up, or too high to bring them down. So you're going to have to explore that and give us your feedback. But thus far, we have had practitioners give us the feedback that both cases, it's been beneficial in both cases, because we went back to Dr. Lee, his original formulation, and through that, we got more of the purity of the whole B vitamin spectrum without a lot of other other substances in that complex. So, and of course, anytime with hypertension, even if you're going to just give them the G, just the three times a day, as I mentioned in my book. And I know a lot of you have said to me, Joe, no matter what I do, I can't get this person's blood pressure down. Here is a way to determine whether they do need medication, or you can bring it down naturally. The person needs in their lifestyle, and this is important to write in your notes, they have to take 10 days and get off of all the inflammatory stimulating foods, and take products that are going to not only balance, in this case, their blood sugar, but to just take the load off to see. Along with this, they should get off of all caffeine and alcohol. Now, maybe you say, well, my clients don't want to do these cleanses. This is only 10 days, which I recommend that everyone, all of us, do some type of a 10-day, you don't have to use this one, some type of a taking a break for 10 days for our usual diet quarterly. So 10 days every 3 months. It's not hard to do. Now, some of us now we're deep into intermittent fasting, but still it's good to take those 10 days. But if you want to determine whether that hypertension is their lifestyle, and it will show them as well, this is the best way, the best to use, the best to take 10 days. Now, the other thing, if they don't want to do that, I say to clients, are you willing to get off of alcohol and caffeine for 3 days? Well, I'll get a headache if I get off of caffeine. Okay, well, back it off for 3 days before, and then complete no caffeine for 3 days. And listen, everyone, it's never not worked for me. It doesn't mean that it normalized and lowered completely, but it was significant. And they can see it, they can feel it. Oh, I feel so much better not being so hyped up on caffeine. And there's a book that really goes into this deeply if you want to get it. It's called Caffeine Blues, and you can get that on Amazon. I don't think Saline River Press carries that book. So here is your first primary product for hypertension, is Cataplex G. Now, one of the next area is what Dr. Lee talked about, and I read in the beginning about circulatory factors. So for those of you that have an HSR, and hopefully all of you are planning to get one, because it's going to tell you so much, the hypertensive person that has in the aortic valve, this is the circulatory finding. This is going to tell you, and you can watch their journey as you apply the nutrition and run another graph. You'll see that this second sound, you could see the normal graph here. This is a 2-to-1 ratio, 1/2 to 1/3, they say, is how it's taught. But you can see the hypertensive person or the person with thick blood, too much cholesterol in the blood, narrowing the valves and creating that rigid, that straw-like arteries, as Dr. Lee described. You can see, how did he describe them? He called them pipe stem arteries. Because when you build up particularly calcium and fat on the arteries begin to stiffen. And they say, well, that's natural aging. So you have two things with arteries related to hypertension. They've lost their flexibility. They've lost their, what I call like cooked spaghetti, that real flexible, so that blood can move easily. Without that rigidity, you lose that, and you get occluding beginning to happen, which the blood has to move, which puts more pressure on the arteries. So this is where we use, as I said, either the mineral phosphorus, because in hypertension, you want to rule out whether it's too much calcium in the blood. These are your clients that take too much vitamin D as an example. They're drawing calcium out of the gut into the blood, but it's not moving to the tissue, which we know vitamin F is the key for that. But if you get that too much buildup of calcium in the blood, the body's going to put it somewhere. Cataracts, kidney stones, or on the arteries. It's going to lay it wherever it can. If it's playing its part in repairing an artery, but then it overdoes it. It builds it up too much. And this is why either soybean lecithin, as I say, it's in my protocol, or phosphorus, that's the phosphate liquid is the product to try first. Okay. But if you get, if you don't have an HSR, you should have someone running an HSR and sending those graphs to you. This is how you can monitor it. The other way for the arteries to make sure that they're not occluding, and when we consider cholesterol, we'll get into that more, is to go to lifeline screening. We just talked about a case where, had this gentleman not gone to lifeline screening, he probably would not be here. So, of course, you got to do something about it for sure. So Here is Dr. Lee, and again, I've got to get when I put these in my notes, but you can get that book, that all of these great explanations from Dr. Lee about these different products. But what does he say about phosphate liquid? Again, muscle stiffness in the joint, hypertensive, pipe stem arteries of advanced case. Here it is, everyone. Now, phosphate does a lot of other things, but our focus today is that hypertensive person. Circulation disturbances, feeling in the chest, dull heart pain. Here it is. You'll see as you go through this and learn about phosphate liquid, how it balances, as he says here, blood viscosity. And there it is. It may be related to circulatory disturbance via blood viscosity. So you can read through this and use this again in the beginning stages of that hypertension when you first start using it, start addressing that with a client. The other factor that the other product that's in also consider that you may or may not know about hypertension is the product Cyruta. Now, we know we mainly use Cyruta Plus, but Cyruta is a very important product because of its ability, again, to work on the integrity of the vasculature of those arteries, because this is the real problem with hypertension. And either the blockage, what do they do with people that have impaired circulation? They put stents in, right? So to keep that clear. And what does he say? Clinical considerations: hypertension, atherosclerosis, circulatory disorders, and also healing. But the main thing with hypertensive is, I wanted to read, where did I want to read? In the coronary or potential coronary patient, a different situation is encountered. The mobilization of tissue deposits of calcium and cholesterol into the general circulation may temporarily raise the blood levels, particularly of cholesterol. So just remember, when you first start using this, this product in particular, it will initially, it may raise those lipid factors because it's lifting it off the lumen of the artery and preventing more from sticking to that, adhering to that, building it up. So that's a real important factor with this product. Cyruta is useful in all problems dealing with capillary fragility and promotion of arterial elasticity. Problems found primarily in the geriatric groups afflicted with atherosclerosis changes, atherosclerotic changes, hypertension, and arthritic tendencies. So very important. And you can read these through. The other product that I'm not going to go into that is in my protocol has to do with Inositol. Now, if you go back to the section where I break down the Cataplex G, there's choline and Inositol in there. That's why I have G as the first product. So for hypertension. because the G has those lipotropic factors. Now, if you wanted to go deeper using the Inositol, you could as well. And yeah, so this is another product, but again, you can add to it if you're working with a hypertensive person, but the main product to use is G, of course. So we've looked at vascular dilation and nerve relaxation with the G, the type A personality. I still can remember John Courtney saying to me, Joe, you just determine whether the person is, slow and relaxed or too hyper. G for the hyper person and B for the that slow, sluggish person. I can still remember him saying that. Then we looked at the circulation piece using phosphorus or phosphate, or soybean lecithin to make sure that those arteries, that they're not occluding and becoming that that stiff pipe stem type arterial system in hypertension. And then, of course, the most important really is what Dr. Lee says here about this product. There is a male gonad hormone known as inhibin. It is water soluble and hasn't had the publicity that testosterone has, but it does stimulate the production of an enzyme in the body known as hydronidase. Hydronidase controls permeability. If there is a lack of this particular factor, the patient will develop what has been termed malignant hypertension. How many clients do you have with hypertension they cannot get rid of? No medications help. You know how many calls, as I said at the beginning, I get on this? He or she gradually gets worse and there is no known remedy for it. We have had good results with hypertension with this gonad factor. The trade name is Orchex. This product has been very successful in these tough cases, which most of them are. So what does Orchex have? What is this hyaluronidase that is in there? Now, you've heard me speak of this, but I've never recorded my thoughts on this. The most effective physiological tranquilizer standard process carries. Whoa, okay. The source of the enzyme hyaluronidase, also known as the spreading factor. It helps normalize transmitter activity in the gut and brain by regulating these powerful chemicals in the nerve synapse. Here's the nerve synapse. I've showed this to you all before, some of you, not all of you. Here it is. These neurotransmitters are made primarily in the gut, and they manage the 1,000 trillion nerve synapses throughout the body. There's 100 trillion in the brain alone. Think of how many there are. And consider, as we're talking, this hypertensive person that they just can't relax. And they can't relax because there's too much of a buildup of neurotransmitters in these nerve synapses. If you get anything from today, you must get this, because even if a client is on 3 blood pressure medications, that's addressing other things that, we all should look up and learn about and understand how these medications work. But we can still use these products. And especially, as I say, especially the G, which again is a relaxant, this, the most powerful relaxant standard process carries, and in the form of the Orchex, and then, as I say, the phosphorus and the Antrinex. So, and this is why opiate addiction is so horrific. So what opiates do is it shuts off this relationship between the dendrite and the axon terminal, that it numbs this. And so nature, what the body does is it say, oh, you don't have enough neurotransmitters. So it builds up too many neurotransmitters in that nerve synapses, in the myel nerve junction related to the muscles as well. And so when the opiate wears off, these people are climbing the walls. They're shaking. They need more. So anyone that, if you're working with opiate or any type of hypertension like this, where the person just can't relax, the key, and this is not taught anywhere else, this is lost information. And that's why I'm primarily teaching this to you, is the key is to use the Orchex, because the spreading factor in that enzyme in the Orchex spreads these neurotransmitters out and balances the energy, you could say, or the chemicals that are influencing the two poles of the nerve synapse. So I hope you all got that. It's very important. It's why you can use it for anything, for digestion, for blood pressure, for calming a person, both men and women. So, oh, that's a repeat, sorry. So here is what Dr. Lee says. What is the first thing that he says about this product? Hyperirritability, depression, psychic tone, hypertension, capillary engorgement, adrenal insufficiency, he says, and a lack of feeling of well-being. Does this describe the hypertensive person? Of course. And as I say, not just the vasculature of the body, digestion, mental strain and tension and inability to cope. Key product. Now, where would we see this in the graph? This very stress. So the second sound in the pulmonic valve, again, all of these ratios are 2 to 1. The work ratio, the work rest period to the full rest period, systolic, diastolic, lub-dub, rest. But the heart should not be lub-dub. That doesn't sound like rest. Lub-dub. And I go deeper into the explanation of this on my heart sound recordings, which I'm not going to go into today. But this is usually a sign, as you can see, the first product is Drenamine, cataplexy. This can be respiratory, of course, but it's primarily adrenal and kidney. And this is where Dr. Lee referred to the Rhinotrophin for hypertension. Oh, this is just more information, which I'm not going to go into, on the neurotransmitters and the nerve synapses. And you can see that these neurotransmitters, look at the acetylcholine, G, here it is again. All of these neurotransmitters that affect blood pressure. Specific amino acids, St. John's wort, which is also along with G and Orchex, relax the system. And so I'm not going to go into this today. So, and here is the Rhinotrophin from the products bulletin. And here, number 3, he says blood pressure changes, hypertension and severe hypotension. So here you get the blessing of the protomorphogen where, again, it self-regulates. If the organ is too high, brings it down. If it's too low, it brings it up. So very important that based on what you're seeing here. So say you saw this in a client and you put them on Drenamine. It didn't work. You tried Pneumotrophin if you think they had a cold or the flu and it didn't work. These, if the right nutrition is found and applied, you will see that this will normalize. How long will it take? It depends, again, on the right dosage, the right product, and if the person is accommodating lifestyle. And this is why I say with hypertension, it is so important that we get them off for 3 days to 2 weeks, alcohol and caffeine, mainly coffee, to get them off of that to see, or to do the 10-day if they really want to go, which includes getting off alcohol, the 10-day cleanse, alcohol and coffee. This will normalize within 72 hours, sometimes, if they really go cold turkey and are really disciplined, you can do it. So where was I here? So the last piece of this that Dr. Lee spoke about, and this is why I like to use the triad of the G, the Orchex, and the Antrinex, is because little do most practitioners know that use standard process is that he used Antrinex for hypertension. Look at the #1 clinical consideration for Antrinex is hypertension, hyperthyroid, tachycardia, hyperirritability. This is Antrinex, everyone. I know you're saying, well, Joe, you've taught us this, but I didn't realize how much. Yeah. Ascites, edema, all of these, cerebral pressure. So surges of blood in the head, that person that when they stand up, they get this feeling in their head, which is associated with hypertension. And here it is. So, and it does it by opening up the blood flow through the liver, which takes the stress off of all of the vasculature and all of the systems in the body. See, so you could see it again in the back, the second page here. Not only is it a physiological antihistamine, but blood pressure lowering factor. It's a synergist to thyroxine. And this is why he ties it in with toxic thyroid, Graves' disease with hyperthyroid, toxic thyroid. And, you know, I've had clients with high blood pressure that medically they couldn't do anything with. And I worked with their thyroid. I worked with their liver and their thyroid. And it brought it down. It balanced it out. People can have subclinical hyperthyroid. It doesn't necessarily show up. They say, oh, you're borderline, you know, in the blood test. So now in my book, of course, there is the Antrinex test. And I'm not going to go into this because it's in the book. And you can ask me questions about it as well when I open it up for questions. But they need to be in your office for a period of time. But there's two things I want to say, which I did put in here, and we wrote it all out, but I'm not going to go into it that much, is make sure that the person, Antrinex does not work well in an alkaline medium if the blood is too alkaline. So make sure that they have either had Zypan or Calamo as our main product for acidifying the night before, or Zypan with their meal, or the Zypan for breakfast or lunch before they come into your office. Or you could use apple cider vinegar, teaspoon when there's salad dressing with olive oil, salt and pepper. Make a nice salad dressing, but get apple cider vinegar or vinegar honey water. All of those things to balance the acidity. It won't make them too acid. It balances the pH. But if a person is too alkaline, you're not going to get that result with Antrinex. The other is to have them, if they're in your office for an hour, hour and a half, have them take their blood pressure a couple hours later when they get home. Because it can take up to 2 or 3 hours, as I say here, after that initial test. And you know who told me that? Some of you who have tried it. And they say, well, it didn't work in my office, but when they got home later, or, if it was a person's wife or husband they were trying it with, they said, we just kept taking the blood pressure and it did come down eventually. So that's very important to remember about the Antrinex test. So this is the book that all of these quotes and information are in. And the reason that I teach from this, the reason that I talk about it and emphasize it so much is there are more pearls and implications than we can ever get to in my lifetime that Dr. Lee, that have just been forgotten. They're not discussed, they're unknown. And so it's very important that you get this book and use it and read it. Just take one product and just read the implications of that product that he was talking about. Then you understand the systems and how the products can work, which that most people do not teach that languaging. This is a language in and of itself. And when I first started in 1972 with standard process, Cataplex G, it's a vasodilator and a nerve relaxant. Phosphate liquid balances the viscosity of the blood. Orchex, the most powerful relaxant that standard process carries. Antrinex dilates the portal vein and acts as a natural antihistamine. So all of these are in my memory banks, my memory hoard, as the Moody Blues said, to use it to find what? They said the lost chord, but to find more answers in relationship to this very challenging condition. But as I say, even if they are on high blood pressure medications, even if they're on diuretics, which ties in with the Rhinotrophin, or you use AC carbamide with that, which is another discussion, but simply is certainly applicable. But you still can use, as I say, either the G, and I hope now listening to me that you've highlighted or written in your notes, the primary for blood pressure, G, Orchex, Antrinex. I mean, G, Phosfood, Orchex, and then check and see if it's liver related. You could do that later on, but use those 3 first and see what you get. Now, is this going to work in your office? No, I would say give it a week. I like to give all protocols at least 2 weeks. But as I say, if they get off of coffee, caffeine, and alcohol, and more of a paleo diet for even 3 days, if they're willing to do that, they will call you and say, hey, I think my blood pressure is balancing out already. So lifestyle is important. What else could you do as far as lifestyle? Well, the other things that I recommend are 30 to 60 minutes of walking a day. There's nothing better to relax a person and to balance that blood pressure. Not heavy exercising with someone with hypertension. They should be getting more into the rhythmical type exercise for their bodies. The other things that I use for this is far infrared sauna, which I have throughout my book. I have some explanations of what that does. But far infrared saunas are famous. An hour once a week or twice a week, even 30 minutes once or twice a week to begin with. They're famous for for helping hypertensive clients. And of course, which is in the back of my book also, is the Beamer to relax the nervous system and to increase microcirculation. It's a big factor that a lot overlook with hypertension. And of course, we know for that type A personality, things like Tai Chi, meditation. I find foot reflexology, which is not something we talk about. We have practitioners on that use this as part of their modality very effectively. We've had before and after HSR graphs where the heart began to relax, began to help the heart to release those hormones that I talked about in the beginning, those oxytocin and other hormones that relax the entire body from the heart. And of course, regular massage as well. So if you have a good masseuse, of course, chiropractic, acupuncture goes without saying. But these others, this type of person, this type A personality or hypertensive person, of course, does better living a life where they surround themselves with relaxing things that relax them. Maybe they have a pet. There are studies done where having a dog or a cat lowers the blood pressure for that owner, for that individual. So all of these things are important. Maybe working in the garden, working in the earth. Lifestyle cannot be underestimated as far as being adjunctive, being part of the adjuvant factor with the nutrition. The nutrition alone isn't going to completely do it. It plays a huge part, not only with your modality, primary modality, as I'm saying, but with lifestyle. And you've heard me say it many times. We have to teach people how to live. That is part of what we teach in our modalities. We have to teach them what proper food is, what the best supplements are. When standard process becomes part of your life, it changes your life forever. It changes your client's life. And we have seen this over and over with the heart sound recorder, of course, and the application of these various protocols. So I think that's everything that I wanted to say. And of course, if you cannot get these notes, if you couldn't extract them from the chat box, then certainly shoot me an email and I will send them to you. And as I say, I have not gotten with the gentleman that's going to help me get these recordings, but I will work on that in the next couple of weeks. So I'd like to open it up now for questions or comments or conversation. We're actually pretty good. We're just a little bit over an hour right now.
Hey, Joe, it's Paige Kelly.
Hey, Paige.
Hey, I have a question about G and the hypertensive patient that is type A, but then there's a G and the hypotensive patient
Right.
that sometimes I've applied G at that point and it's they can be
Yeah, right.
hypertensive with an adrenal problem.
Mm-hmm.
So when I applied G, it would drop their blood pressure a little bit too much. Can you speak to that a little bit about the G?
Yeah, and this is what I was saying. There are, because G will lower blood pressure. And the old Cataplex B had a reputation, not in all cases, for raising blood pressure. But this is why I'm saying, Paige, the new Cataplex B core, try that. Okay. Now, the other thing with those hypotensive, when you read through that section that I gave you the notes on Rhinotrophin, you will see that that's what Dr. Lee used for that hypotensive client, and the Cyruta as well. So we've got to get into, you know, it's delicate with those hypotensive, because we have to tonify without overstimulating, you know. So this is where we go deep into what Lee was doing with this, which was Rhinotrophin, Renofood, I like to use, or Rhinotrophin, one or the other. And then try the Cataplex B core. I think you'll find that that's going to be the winning formulation for that type of a person. And certainly, and the reason that Lee emphasized the Rhinotrophin is because not only is really the kidneys the organ of stress, but the person with that lowered blood pressure, they have lost that tone, not only in their kidneys, but throughout their body. And so this is a real key. And now most of you probably have never used Rhinotrophin. Maybe you've used Renofood, which is half Rhinotrophin and half Arginex. So whichever one you used, you're going to see a difference with these hypotensive clients. Now, the other thing that John Courtney taught me about hypotensive, we could look at that maybe next time, is to use things like more calcium in the blood. So then you wouldn't use the phosphate. You know, that's just the opposite. So we'll look at that at another time. But for now, to answer your question, I would use the Cataplex B core with that hypotensive client, and then either Renofood or Rhinotrophin. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And one more thing though, Paige, you don't have to come back on, but one more point to this. These are the people that need adrenal support, but you can't give them Drenamine because it has the G in it. And this is what you're speaking to, Paige. So this is where you bring in straight Cataplex C. Straight Cataplex C at 6 a day. Or another, C formulation, like I've got here, Cyruta Plus or Cyruta. I probably should have put Cyruta Plus or Cyruta here. But yes, so these are the people that have lost a lot of adrenal function because they've taken too much ascorbic acid. they don't have the tyrosinase and the in the cataplex C and the P factors. Remember, kidneys, if kidney is the main organ of stress, you probably all never heard that before today. The kidneys are basically very vasculature. They're all blood vessels. And this is where Cyruta Plus, or as I indicated and Lee used, Cyruta for hypertension and kidney issues. So,
Joseph, what about
yes.
desiccated adrenal?
Yeah, definitely for if you're thinking of adrenal, but in the case of hypertension or hypotension, it's fine to use these products. Desiccated adrenal, Drenamin in the case of hypertension. I've got it right here in the primary. But don't forget, because as Lee taught, and I've been teaching you, you've got to support the kidneys. You cannot leave out one part of that alliance, which is adrenal kidney. You know, in most cultures of the world, it's kidney and they add on the adrenal, adrenal. It's added on to the kidney. So this is important. If you're going to give them something like desiccated adrenal, make sure that you're either including something to support kidney, at least for a couple of weeks, at least one bottle's worth, to see how they respond. You know, and how do you know? You look at the graph. Where is my graph here? Sorry. You want to see in that pulmonic valve, you want to see, oh, let me just do this here. Sorry, for some reason. Oops, no. What did I do? You want to see that second sound going down. I lost something here. Let's see. Where am I here?
Go up to hypertension presentation 2.
Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. What was I trying to? Oh, slideshow. I was trying to get full page. All right, there we go. Yeah, you want to make sure that that second sound in the adrenals is coming down. And as I say, if you apply all of those principles with that client, lifestyle, the right supplement, this will come down pretty quickly. But to answer your question, I had a client that I had her on Drenamin. I had her on, and then that didn't bring this down. I used adrenal complex from MediHerb. That didn't bring it down. And then I used the adrenal desiccated, and that balanced it. Now, she made a big change in her life too, which took the stress off. But as far as supplements, and we made a lot of changes in her lifestyle as well. She was drinking too much coffee all day long. So we just limited her to 1 cup in the morning, gave her the desiccated adrenal, and this normalized. So.
Joseph,
Yes.
this is Sue Massey. I just saw a patient about 3 hours ago. Her blood pressure, she's 63 years old. And on Tuesday, she was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. So she didn't want to do medication. She came with her daughter and they're like, what can we do? You know, whatever. So we did the HSR and so forth. Her blood pressure is 193 over 123. Okay.
Yeah.
So my question is, we were just talking about G, Orchex, and fast food. Obviously, I'm not going to give her fast food, you know, and Antrinex. So
Right.
my question is, would you then, I substituted I gave her organically bound minerals. I gave her everything here and then waited and did another graph. Her graph is really horrendous, but
Yeah. Well, this is where I would go with the
G and
the Orchex and
organically
then
bound minerals.
And then, I'm sorry, G and Minchex.
I gave her
In that
Minchex
case, yeah,
and G and
yeah.
E2 because I
Yep.
thought that whole oxygen thing, was
Yep.
going on. And I
Right.
gave her Cardiotrophin and Cataplex B core. And the graph got a little bit better, but not enough. But she's coming back next Friday. I gave her stuff to take,
Yeah.
to take with her.
Well, this is why I had put in Cardio Plus in here, because with that hypertensiveness, plus she has all the edema, this is where you may want to go with Cardio Plus and Renifood and AC carbamide to get the fluid out.
Okay. Well, we didn't say anything about fluid. I don't know.
Oh,
why-
I thought you said she had edema. Oh, okay.
No edema. But what I'm thinking is she has tic tac. I mean, it's like scribbles on all 4 valves. It's really, really bad.
Well, then that's going to be G, E2, and organically bound minerals. So
Okay, I gave her those 3.
that's what you do first.
Okay, but I also gave her Cardiotrophin to strengthen the heart because she's afraid of having a heart attack, and the
Right.
Cataplex B core.
Yeah.
That's what
Well,
I started her on those products.
That's fine. That's good.
Okay. But I just didn't realize about like Antrinex. I should have done that also, but
Yeah,
I
but once
do
you
much.
once you have the rhythm of the heart out
okay.
of balance, where this now the next work cycle has come over to here,
Okay.
and they're in that tic-tac rhythm, as you're saying, then you have to fix that first, because that means her brain and her body are not communicating. That's an autonomic imbalance that is of great concern, which you can see it in her graph. So
Right. I'm going to send you her graph just so you can take a look at it. Maybe
yeah,
we'll talk another,
sure.
in the next day or 2.
Yeah, just
I'd
send
love
it
to
over and
include
I
this.
can look at it from my phone. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Joseph,
Yeah.
Joanne Hoyt here.
Hi.
In the hypertension protocol in your book on page 13 that we've been looking at, the phosphorus, the phosphate liquid or the lecithin, often a person with high blood pressure also does have that, faster heart rate and so forth. And so
Right.
giving them the phosphorus, the mineral that accelerates.
You wouldn't use that first. You're absolutely right. So you would not give that, right? So you'd have to leave that out.
Oh, okay. So even though that, that is one of the triad, correct?
Right, but yes, but you would, if the 2-to-1 ratio is the 2-to-1 ratio balanced?
Oh, I see.
If it's balanced, then you can use it. The only time you would not use this is what Sue was describing as that tic-tac rhythm.
That's what she had. It's like boom, 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 boom through
Yeah.
all 4 valves.
So
no phosphate. We put her
Right.
on potassium instead, organically bound minerals.
yeah, so right now you can't balance out that excess calcium in the blood or on the arteries. You can't, to alleviate the hypertension, you can't work with that right now. But if that work to rest ratio, Joanne, is 2-to-1, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
And so if it is not yet, if it is what Sue was just describing,
Yeah,
then what would be our first?
Then you could use the G, you could use the Minchex or organically bound minerals. And then and
E2.
yeah, and then you
like
could
E2.
use E2. But remember, when you use Minchex or Orchex, now a lot of you probably don't know this, but it's the same, it's very similar ingredients. The first ingredient in Orchex is the first ingredient in E2. Now, Sue probably didn't know that, so she's doubling up on that, but you know what? It's fine. Use them both. As much of that.
I wanted to see a change while she was sitting here. So there was a change, but not extreme. I was expecting a more extreme change.
Yeah, well, but she, she's in tough shape. It wouldn't change that fast, but in 72 hours it would. So, but does that answer your question, Joanne?
Yes. So, okay, if the 2-to-1 ratio is not in balance, then G Minchex or organically bound minerals and
Yeah.
E2.
Right.
Yes, that's for
Uh-huh.
tachycardia.
Yeah, for tachycardia. We
Yeah.
use that all the time for that.
Right.
Uh-huh. So we diverge from this protocol in that case
Well,
and prioritize
that's
the
right.
autonomic.
That's
Uh-huh.
right. Yeah, you have to get that communication between the brain and the body right first. This is why if you don't have an HSR, I don't know how people do it. Well, I know how practitioners do it is they read the pulses, but you have to have some way or use a pulse oximeter and see how fast they are. You know, if they have a pulse of over 80, then you would not want to, you know, again, as you said, Joanne, accelerate, you know, so you want to make sure there's ways to find that out without having the HSR, but the HSR is the best. Because
Yes.
95,
yeah,
the lady
And-
that I saw.
And then let's go back to those two products, Minchex and Orchex, what you were just saying about them being very similar. I never have understood that because in the clinical reference guide, it says that Minchex is 65% Mintran and only 35% Orchex.
Well, some of the ratios in that book are not correct. So my understanding, and I'm not saying that I am correct,
Okay,
my understanding is Minchex is half Mintran and half Orchex.
okay.
That's my understanding. So
With the first ingredient being the hyaluronidase, or
no, the hyaluronidase is going to be in the 50% of the Orchex
right?
in that product. There's no hyaluronidase in Mintran. So
Right. Yeah.
standard process has 3 levels of relaxants. Mintran is the, you know, just general for children. It's great.
Mhm.
Minchex is a little more. If they have the main reason why they're not relaxing is they don't have the 3 primary relaxing minerals: calcium, magnesium, potassium.
Yeah.
So that's when you would use Minchex. If it's the severest anxiety, depression, chronic hypertension, then you want to go with the big guns. You want to go with straight Orchex for a while. Then you shift it to Minchex, because
Mhm.
who on this planet is not deficient in relaxing minerals,
Right. Yeah.
especially in the United States right now?
Mhm.
So this is the most comprehensive relaxant, but some people, this won't lower their blood pressure, but this will with the G, and as I say, the Antrinex or the phosphate. Yeah.
Minchex and Orchex are both in a base of G, are they?
Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at
Yeah.
Minchex, it has B6 in it. It has niacinamide, and niacinamide is niacinamide B6. That product has a lot of the B2. B2, you can look at it on my B vitamin chart. B2 and B3 are your big relaxants. Where's my chart here? They're your big relaxants, B2 and B3. Yeah, here it is. Riboflavin and niacin. Also folic acid, PABA. See all of these, choline and inositol betaine. That's all
Yes.
in G. So
Uh-huh.
yeah. And if you don't have this newsletter, I can send it to you, any of you separately, or you have it in your notes now, but I can send it to you separately. And certainly you can copy this and give it to your clients so that they can look at it. It's pretty detailed. I wrote this for health practitioners. I didn't write it necessarily for clients, but certainly if they're, you know, they want to learn more, you know, they're saying to you, well, what's the difference between B and G? It's easier just to give them this, or a page of this, copy it. So All
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Joseph, I never used Orchex for years, and now I have. And it's not only, I always thought it was for the person that was going to blow their stack, because that's what I was always told.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I don't really meet too many that are ready to blow their stack.
Right.
But I'm using it on gentlemen for their knuckles. They come in telling me their hands are hurting, they're stiff, they're tight, their knuckles hurt. And I give them Orchex, and literally within 3 to 5 minutes, they cannot believe the difference.
Yeah, yeah, it is, because what is making that pain is what I said about the nerve synapses.
Right, exactly. So I'm just saying, don't think of
So
Vortex just for the person that's going to blow their stack. Think of it for pain and inflammation and tightness. It's
that's right.
fabulous.
It is.
Joseph,
It is.
especially
Yes.
headaches. Orchex, I used to get a headache if I was up half an hour past my bedtime.
Wow.
I would wake up with a migraine, and I take 2 Orchex at bed, and I never have that problem anymore.
Yeah, it's right. It's the most underused product that really has is probably in the top 5 favorable results of any product, and nobody hardly uses it. Listen, this is what he says: hyperirritability, melancholy, hypertension, and by the way, that hyperirritability is yes, where's the headache thing? Capillary engorgement, there it is. Hypertension, pellagra, skin lesions, adrenal insufficiency, menopausal symptoms, and the lack of feeling of well-being. Yeah, read this through about Orchex. It truly is a great, especially Orchex. They should be on back order right now with the way people are in this country and the conflicts between people right now.
We need to put it in water.
In,
Don't tell anybody.
I'm going to tell Charlie that. I'm going to say, I was teaching Charlie and a practitioner suggesting Orchex in the water system of the whole United
That's how
States.
mellow we'd all be.
It's true. Right now, if you go in my car, I sit there, drink tea in the morning, but watch the, and think about my day and get going and answer calls. I have Orchex in it. I take 3 every morning. That's how I start my day. It's one of the things I take every day.
Joe?
Yes.
Hi dear, it's Constance in Stratford Green. I was wondering, could you speak to hawthorn in maybe adding that also? I know there's a lot of things on the list, but as an herb?
Well, I have to be honest about hawthorn. Maybe you have. I have not found it to lower blood pressure. I just haven't. But what I have used very successfully for lowering blood pressure is St. John's wort. So when I wrote this book, I totally only put in here, even I put in what worked for me. And if those products that Lee suggested didn't work, I put in the products that I found worked. So I have to be honest with you. I just have never found hawthorn to change the graph or to lower blood pressure. And I know they teach it. It's a great circulatory herb, but it hasn't moved the needle for me. Now, if you have found that to be true, I'd like to see your before and after graphs, or with your blood pressure changes.
Right, I've been using it for me actually, and I haven't found much difference. However, I don't use half the stuff that's on the list, so I have to start beefing up that list. Yeah.
So, but Constance, just do that 10-day blood sugar cleanse and see if it goes down. Just cut all the other stuff out of your diet. Just 10 days, just do it, or even 3 days, do it.
Yeah, I don't know if Sharon Johnson is on here, but she keeps hammering me about my caffeine intake. So there you go.
Well, so can you go but don't go cold turkey, because you'll get the worst headache you've ever had in your life.
I've tried and I've gone back. Yeah, I've tried.
So what you want to do is do 3 days of decaf, then go cold turkey. So but don't just get off. If you're a big coffee drinker, don't just get off of it. But you will see, Constance, in 72 hours. You call me and tell me. I would love to hear, but I almost guarantee, 100% guarantee it will at least lower it. But I would use some St. John's wort. I love this as a
Okay.
relaxant. So
The reason why St. John's wort works is because it breaks open the biofilm or the outer surface protein of your viruses and your bacteria. So Epstein-Barr virus, which almost everybody has, you know, you can see why it works so well. It's not just an antidepressant, it's super antiviral.
Yeah.
that's right. It's
That's involved in
it's
high blood pressure always.
yeah, it's an antiviral, as Sue's saying, but it's an anti-relaxant, big time. It just, you know, that mind that can't shut off, and that with choline, which is in big time in Cataplex G. These two really help, is what you're saying to that caffeine drinker. That now, when you hold your hand out, this is a funny question. Does your hand kind of shake constant, or is it okay?
Pretty good stability.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say it really isn't shaking.
So this is the other thing that I've done, especially with men. If I'm working with their blood pressure and I have them hold out their hand, and this determines whether I give them Orchex or Minchex. If their hand trembles, I give them the Minchex. Now, the reason why goes back to, it doesn't mean you all have to do this. I'm just telling you what I do. Because they need the calming minerals. Men tend not to get a lot of calcium, magnesium, or potassium. They don't get it. So here, I've only got one shot here, one product, because they don't want to take a lot. And so that's why I combine the two. And that's how I tell. Or people that, you know, people that twitch a lot. I had a doctor call me yesterday about their 19-month-old child. This child is pulling his hair. Now he's teething. Now I know that. So calcium lactate will clear most of that, about 70% of that. But he needs something with G in it. So I gave him the children's chewable Catalin. Children's chewable Catalin has quite a bit of G in it. So he's going to call me back in 2 weeks, but I guarantee, but if someone is twirling their hair, pulling their hair, biting their nails, shaking their leg, this is all Cataplex G, everyone. This is G and the calming minerals, primarily calcium, but magnesium and potassium. These are the things that we should all be loading ourselves on right now. I mean, we laughed about the Orchex, but also, you know, we should all be on a lot of G right now. Anyway.
Joseph, for kids, is the calcium and magnesium in with that Cataplex, chewable Cataplex?
No, Catalin, well,
that.
Catalin will naturally have magnesium, not much calcium. So with children, you give them the Catalin for the B vitamins. I mean, adrenal support. You know, Catalin has adrenal, kidney, liver, and spleen. Most practitioners don't know that. Catalin is an amazing, and you're giving that to children. It's incredible, in my opinion. But no, with children like that, you should give them the calcium lactate powder with it. Yeah. Yep. Or now children, I would not give Minchex or Orchex. It's too strong. I would give them Mintran or calcium lactate. Okay. Now, the way you can tell, remember we see on the graphs with children, everyone, remember we see that children tend to have that tic-tac, that fast heart rate. Those are the children that need the potassium in the Mintran, the organically bound minerals. So Mintran does not have a great taste, but if you grind it up, you can disguise it usually in some yogurt or applesauce. But we'll do a session on children sometime. But so does that answer your question, Donna? So if they, you know, for the B vitamins for children, now the Cataplex B core, Donna, tastes great. Children should be able to eat that.
I
Now,
agree.
but that's new. But if you don't have any choice and they're only going to take one product for B vitamins, the children's chewable Catalin is okay. You got to give them, unless they're really small, you got to give them 3 twice a day. But they chew them up. And Chondroplex does have some calcium lactate in it, just not a lot. But that might be enough for a child too. And that comes in a chewable form.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Joseph, this is Sibylla,
Hey.
and I also wanted to say something for high blood pressure. And very often overlooked is the breath. And there is actually an FDA approved gadget called Respirate, and the only thing you do is breathe.
Yes.
Yes, breathe, and it's a.
I'm so
but
glad. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I meant to put this in here. There's a book that Lynn told me about.
Yes, it's Breath by James Nestor.
Oh, great!
It's
Can you?
It's on the bestseller list, and
Yes.
it is beautifully written. I read it, like you just read it. It's like the best novel about breath and all these people who have won
Yeah, it's
gold
true.
medals, and just because they're breathing, and it talks exactly about the Sudarshan Kriya, which
Yeah.
is a breath method. It talks about Buteyko breathing. It talks about all these breathing exercises, what mouth breathing does to us. It's very bad for us. Sleep apnea, snoring, and how breathing brings down blood pressure. It's amazing.
Excellent. I'm so glad you brought that up. Monica or Lynn, can you put that in the chat box, the name of that book?
It's Breath
Yeah.
by James Nestor, Nestor. I'll write it into. I'll write it down.
It's called Breath, B-R-E, breath.
Like breath,
B-R-E-A-T-H. Yeah.
B-A-T-H, and it's a yellow cover and has a little dots for the lungs, and it's a fascinating book. It's
Yes,
it's excellent.
Yeah, I forgot. I was going to order that book and read it and share it with you, but thank you for mentioning it. Yes. It's so funny. My dad always was famous for, when we were upset, the blood pressure's up, your adrenals, everything. He'd say, Joe, just take a deep breath, right? Take 3 deep breaths. And I have worked over the years, and you know what? I never put this in my book. Boy, I'm so glad you brought this up. There's so many things we could talk about.
Yeah, he basically says breathe in, but then the out breath is the one, and he explains it. And I think there's a little bit of confabulation in his book about what really happens, but he says the long out breath brings up the carbon dioxide, which brings up the acidity in the body slightly from being too alkaline. The blood being too alkaline brings up the acidity, and then
I love this guy already. Yeah.
Yeah, the blood pressure comes down. But that area is slightly a little bit combambulated. I think there's something there that is tricky that I think maybe he's got it wrong. So maybe I got it wrong, what I just said. But yes.
Oh, it's good. So the other thing that I wanted to say is there's a yoga teaching. You just mark some point of pain in your body. So you would palpate that point of pain anywhere in your body that's really sore on you. Then you take a deep breath. You hold it for as long as you can. You don't force it. You don't have to pass out. You take a deep breath and you hold it. You gently let it out. Then you take another one. You hold it as long as you can. You gently let it out, and you do that a 3rd time. Then palpate that same point. It diminishes pain, and because it takes you out of sympathetic dominance, it takes you out of the fight or flight. The tiger is no longer taking you, and you do it all with breath. Why do children, when they get very frustrated, they hold their breath? Some of them hold their breath to the point that they pass out, which is fine. They'll start breathing again. They won't die. But even inherent in the child, they know to hold their breath. and to let it out and let that balance come. Yeah, that's very good. That's
And then the other thing that he talks about, and also that I also have discovered before, is Wim Hof. W-I-M and then H-O-F is the Dutch guy, and he's called the Iceman because he's defying all science and whatnot, talking about how you get sick and whatnot. And he is having on YouTube, he has lots of breathing exercises too.
Yeah.
Huh?
Let me just mute everybody. Sibylla, come back in here. Come back in, dear.
Yeah, I'm just pressing the space button and then releasing it when I don't talk. But so Wim Hof, the Wim Hof method.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that is
these are great. Yeah. I want to add.
Breathing.
Yeah, I want to add that to these notes for future practitioners. So thank you for that. Well, anybody else with a question or comment? Because we should go here. We've been almost 2 hours. So
yes, hi Joseph, it's Ray. I do have somebody who called about a 6-year-old child, in fact, and talked about palpitations with her that wouldn't settle down after exercise even. Right. And did I hear you then say that that either the chewable Catalin, some Cataplex G, and also Mintran,
yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, for children. And the one thing about children, now I'm not saying this person, this child had it, is children get way too much sugar, number one, and children before exercise, if they're dehydrated, they will go into that palpitation. So, they don't have to drink a gallon of water, but have them take a few sips of water before, during, and after exercise for sure. And there are even water drinks with electrolytes. That's what are those electrolyte minerals? Calcium, magnesium, potassium, right? Sodium. So all of that is important for children upon exercise. But yes, either if you can't get the G tastes horrible, the children's Catalin and the Mintran usually will slow that down within a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay, great.
But
wonderful.
Thank you. Glucose with children. I mean, you've all done it. I've sat there with my grandchildren, and they get, we're out to eat, and they get some kind of a sugar drink. Then they're bouncing off the walls. And God bless them. They were fine when we sat down for dinner, and now they're laughing and giggling and joking and jumping around. They're better now as they get older, but you could see that it's just too much glucose for a child. So yeah.
Okay, great.
But I would love for you to all try to get children to either grind it up and just put it in their food, the Cataplex B core. I want to hear more about this with children, because it's got, the beet in it, it's got carrot, and it's got sweet potato. It's pretty sweet tasting, and I believe that it's got a little honey. It's bound with honey. So it's a pretty sweet taste that children should not object to. And there's a little bit of liver in there, and then there's the nutritional yeast, but that's not, children don't usually object to that. They mainly object to the liver in there, but it's only 19% liver, I think. So please try that one with children as well. So, well, thank you all for being on. I will be on with you again next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Send your graphs, we'll get through them. And as I say, this was recorded today, so we will get this, I'll load this series somewhere and let you know where that is. So blessings to you all, and
Thank you.
we'll talk again
Thank
soon.
you, Joseph. Blessings.
Thanks so much, Joseph.
You're welcome.